The U.S. Senate impeachment trial against Donald Trump continues this Friday, when his defense team will present their arguments. Winner of the first rounds of Ecuador's presidential election, Andrés Arauz continued his campaign. Meanwhile, the president of Ecuador's National Electoral Council believes the request of presidential candidate Yaku Perez for a recount of votes in the dispute for the second place with Guillermo Lasso in the first round should be addressed. India and China have started to disengage troops from their disputed border area in Ladakh region. Hello, welcome to From the South. I am Yaku Perez from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The impeachment trial of Donald Trump continued this Friday in the U.S. Senate, with the former president's defense team due to present their arguments. House impeachment managers finished presenting the case against Trump on Thursday, having argued that the former president was aware he was inciting his supporters to violence. Trump lawyer David Grohan said Thursday that his team expected it would take just a few hours for them to present their defense this Friday. Speaking to reporters, he criticized the case made by House managers, claiming they had turned evidence into entertainment, which he described as horrific. Meanwhile, after 2 days of arguments for impeachment, several Republican senators indicated their minds had been changed, and the issue of constitutionality remained a concern. The International Monetary Fund is set to investigate the $50 billion loan granted to Argentina in 2018 during the administration of former President Mauricio Macri. The investigation will be carried out by Fund's Independent Evaluation Office. The agency will try to determine Argentina's compliance with the 4 criteria set for the exceptional access to financing policies. In that sense, the Independent Evaluation Office has expressed doubts as to whether Argentina had the capacity in 2018 to guarantee payment of its foreign debt, which is one of the requests by the IMF to order to approve access to extraordinary financing. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro held a meeting with United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights, Alina Grohan, on a negative impact of the bilateral sanctions imposed by the U.S. government. Reporter Grohan will hold meetings with senior government officials, the National Human Rights Council members, and the National Assembly, civil society sectors, and Venezuelan opposition. The unofficial expressed that her visit serves to verify the adoption, maintenance, or application of sanctions hindered to full realization of the human rights of the population. The Venezuelan president praised Grohan's efforts and thanks him for his joint work with the Venezuelan government towards the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
Undertaking this act of salute, of acknowledgement and farewell to someone who, in almost 5 years, has been able to intensely experience the Venezuelan process. As ambassador of the United Nations system, he has been a direct witness of development in our country. We have been reading things with an eye on the 2030 Agenda, the Sustainable Development Agenda. We're facing very complex situations, and we have managed to build truly innovative mechanisms of communication and coordination despite all the circumstances that we have affecting us in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, and this year 2021.
For his part, the UN resident coordinator Peter Grohan presented an assessment of his term.
During all our work as the United Nations, as a team, here you have an important and a strong team. Our guideline was always finding a way to help, to support Venezuelans to find their way, and especially their path to development in the first place, but also to see how we can eventually assist those who need a special assistance with humanitarian aid.
The Brazilian Workers' Party held an online event to commemorate its 41st anniversary this week. Our correspondent Brian Muir brings us more details.
In February 1980, a coalition of labor unions, social movements, Catholic ecclesiastical-based communities, student activists, and Marxist intellectuals formed the Brazilian Workers' Party, the PT. This week it held an online event commemorating its 41st anniversary.
The history of our country is a story of domination, looting of our wealth and exploitation of our people, amongst racism and sexism that is structural in Brazil's capitalist class society. We also have a history of a lot of struggle and resistance.
The event featured music and greetings to the party from social movement, union, and political leaders from around Latin America and the world.
Only through international solidarity of like-minded people around the world, in Britain, in the Labour Party, socialists all around the world, with you in the Workers' Party in Brazil. My greetings and my solidarity.
The event served as a reminder that, despite the right-wing 2016 coup and years of character assassination and persecution of its leaders, the PT is still the largest political party in Brazil and one of the largest left-wing parties in the world.
Identification with the excluded and with the workers is part of the history and formation of the PT. It characterizes and defines our actions. It's the foundation of our way of governing.
Brazil may be suffering its greatest crisis in decades, but the working class organized left is still here and still fighting for justice. Brian Muir, teleSUR, São Paulo.
We will go now to a short break. Follow us on Twitter at teleSUR English and Perez Moya teleSUR. We will be right back. Welcome back. The National Electoral Council of Ecuador continues the audit of the vote count following the general elections held on February 7. With 99% of the ballots audited, Andrés Arauz is consolidated as the winner of the first round of the presidential election, with more than 32% of the votes, and continue his campaign. Meanwhile, neck and neck in second place are Yaku Perez of the Pachakutik Indigenous Party and Guillermo Lasso of the Creating Opportunities Party, both of whom have made allegations of electoral fraud. Perez has so far secured 19.48% of votes, while Lasso is just ahead of him with 60%. After having trailed behind until now, the population is still waiting for the Electoral Council to make the full results official in order to find out which of the two candidates will face Andrés Arauz in the second round. The presidential candidate of Ecuador, Pachakutik Indigenous Party, Yaku Perez, this Thursday led a march to the National Electoral Council in Quito to ask for a vote recount in 7 provinces of the country where he was claimed there was electoral fraud. The event came out of the second round scheduled for April 11. The presidential of the Electoral Council, Diana Atamain, confirmed via Twitter that the organization received the candidate's petition and stated that she believed the authority should approve it in order to demonstrate the transparency of the process. Yaku also invited his rival Guillermo Lasso, who narrowly beat him to second place, to join him in calling for the recount. In response on Twitter, Lasso said he had accepted the invitation to meet for talks at Electoral Council on Friday in the presence of international observers. The Republican left of Catalonia party leader Oriol Junqueras held a political rally in Vilanova, La Geltrú on Thursday, ahead of February 14 regional elections, before going back to the prison where he is serving a sentence for sedition and misappropriation of public funds.
There is a candidate who wants to be a candidate with the votes of those who hate our language and our culture. There is a candidate who aspires to be president, he says, with the votes of those who said they would work to destroy our health system. There is a candidate who represents many of the parties. He is the first, with a long tradition of corruption of all kinds. There is a president who wants to rule our country as if he was sitting in a Moncloa office. That's why we gamble so much in this February 14th election. That's why I insist on asking everyone that you go to vote in this election.
In Spain, the General Union of Workers and Workers' Commission Union Federation took the streets on Saturday to demand the repeal of labor reforms and an increase in minimum wage. More than 50 rallies were organized all over Spain in front of government buildings, with the exception of Madrid, where the protest was held in front of the Economic Ministry. In addition to the repeal of the labor reforms, unions are also demanding an end to the 2013 pension reforms, which link the yearly update of pensions to the situation of social security accounts. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko presided over the People's Assembly this Thursday, which is held every 5 years to discuss the nation's future. During his speech, the president focused on the strengthening of the geostrategic relationship with Russia. He also discussed several key issues regarding the modernization of the country in terms of productive and technological development, the defense of sovereignty, and the presentation of a draft of new constitution. Lukashenko offered an assessment of the implementation of social development program between 2016 and 2020 and listened to proposals for discussions on the main points of the new economic development plan for the next 5 years. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries trimmed its forecast for a rebound in global oil demand in 2021 this Thursday. In its monthly report, OPEC said it expects oil demand to rise by 5.8 million barrels a day in 2021, down by 100,000 barrels a day from its January forecast for an average of 96.1 million barrels a day. The prospect of weaker demand has already prompted OPEC and its allies, known as OPEC Plus, to slow their plans to boost output. Meanwhile, group raises the forecast of oil, the economic world growth this year, to 4.8% from 4.4% previously, despite the impact of challenges such as COVID-19 variants and the effectiveness of vaccines. In the United States, a shortage of COVID-19 vaccines is hindering efforts to vaccinate residents of California and other states. Los Angeles has temporarily shut down 5 mass vaccination sites after running out of doses. Mayor Eric Garcetti started the city will exhaust its supplies of the first doses of Moderna vaccine by Thursday, forcing it to close drive-through and walk-up vaccination sites on Friday and Saturday. The sites, which can administer thousands of shots daily, may not reopen until the city gets more supplies. This could possibly arrive next Tuesday or next Wednesday, although smaller mobile vaccination clinics will continue their works. Experts note the supply crunch should start to ease as manufacturers ramp up vaccine production. Meanwhile, the federal government is expected to approve a single-shot vaccine by Johnson & Johnson, which will add to the nation's supplies.
By tomorrow, the city will have exhausted its current supply of the Moderna vaccine for first-dose appointments. This is an enormous hurdle in our race to vaccinate Angelenos. And unfortunately, it means that we will have to temporarily close Dodger Stadium and the other 4 non-mobile vaccination sites for 2 days.
And so what we saw in LA was the problem that they have the venue, they have the people, they have everything worked out, but they don't have the vaccine this week.
Paraguayan government authorities confirmed Thursday that the country will receive 1 million doses of a Sputnik V vaccine in the coming days as part of the beginning of the mass vaccination program. Minister of Health Julio Mazzoleni stated that the first batches of the vaccine produced in Russia could arrive in the country during the second half of February. Mussolini pointed out that the purchase is part of the previous agreements between the government and the Russian Direct Investment Fund. So far, the country has reported over 140,000 cases and more than 2,000 deaths. 2 million doses of China's CanSino COVID vaccine arrived in Mexico early Thursday morning. The arrival of the vaccines was confirmed by officials from the Mexican Foreign Minister. The authorities explained that the doses will send to the city of Querétaro to be packaged. Foreign Secretary Marcelo Ebrard noted that the doses will speed up the vaccination process against COVID-19 and also recalled that the antigens of China's CanSino and Sinovac vaccines have been approved in the country. On Sunday, Mexico is expecting a shipment of almost 1 million vaccine doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Portugal's parliament voted on Thursday to extend the country's state of emergency through March 1st, allowing the government to keep the current national lockdown in place for the rest of the months.
These have been 2 tough weeks, but they have finished better than they started. Number of infections and deaths are the worst in Europe and the worst in the world. High pressure on health services, mixed feelings on European support, and some political voices calling on a national salvation government. These have been days, some more on this almost 1-year saga, heavy on everyone, dramatic for many.
The World Health Organization has expressed concern about the increase in COVID-19 cases in Africa after the continent recorded a 40% rise in deaths in the last months as a result of a new variant. Authorities detailed that over 22,000 deaths have been registered across the continent in the past 28 days, with the overall deaths toll since the start of the pandemic now approaching 100,000. WHO Regional Director Matsido Moeti noted that the increase in deaths is generally a result of the collapse of the health system, combined with the shortage of health professionals in hospitals. The news comes as the continent continues to fight two more contagious new variants of the virus and prepares for the largest vaccination campaign in its history. We have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. On Thursday, India and China began to pull back troops and battle tanks from a contested lake area hiding in the western Himalayas after an agreement was reached by the nations.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to inform the House today that as a result of our well-thought-out approach and sustained talks with the Chinese side, we have now been able to reach an agreement on disengagement in the north and south bank of the Pangong Lake. These are mutual and reciprocal steps, and any structure that had been built by both sides since April 2020 in both North and South Bank area will be removed and the landforms will be restored.
The defense minister added the nations also agreed to have a temporary moratorium on military activities in the North Bank.
It has also been agreed to have a temporary moratorium on military activities by both sides in the North Bank, including patrolling to the traditional areas. Patrolling will be resumed only when both sides reach an agreement in diplomatic and military talks that would be held subsequently. The implementation of this agreement started yesterday in the North and South Bank of the Pangong Lake. It will substantially restore the situation to that existed prior to the commencement of the standoff last year.
In Senegal, a national army operation started a resettlement plan for displaced people in the Casamance region in the south of the country after dismantling several rebels camps in the area. Military authorities assert that the operation is also aimed to curb the uncontrolled traffic of timber and cannabis in the region. The conflict in Casamance is a low-intensity civil war between the Senegalese state and the Movement of Democratic Force of Casamance, which since 1982 has caused hundreds of deaths and displaced thousands. With this operation, the army, supported by the neighboring Guinea-Bissau, is seeking to progressively dismantle the rebels' positions. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa delivered his annual address to the nation on Thursday in the midst of the ongoing health and economic crisis and division in his ruling party. In February, the president outlined his national plan for the year, but this time he faced greater challenge with a pandemic and more imported population while battling for his political survival within the African Nations Congress. The country is Africa's hardest hit by the coronavirus, which has sent the economic plummeting to its worst figures in a decade. Meanwhile, a slew of government officials are embroiled in corruption allegations linked to pandemic funds.
We, the people of South Africa, have over the past year experienced a terrible tragedy and hardship. We were victims as a people of oppression. We resisted this, the flames of injustice, but they did not consume us or destroy us. We too have proven to be resilient in many, many ways. A million people in our country are known to have died.
Newly elected head of the Libyan Presidential Council, Mohamed Menfi, arrived Thursday in the eastern city of Benghazi, the stronghold of divides country eastern factions, as part of a campaign to foster unity ahead the national elections in December. Menfi arrived from Athens, where he has been living for the past 3 years, and immediately met with dozens of tribal elders, academics, and activists inside the VIP lounge at the Benina airport. His visit follows an UN-sponsored conference last week in which delegates from Libyas were inside picket for interim leader to guide the nation ahead the December elections. Menfi, a diplomat from the country's east, was picked to head the Presidential Council, which includes 2 other officials. The forum also shows Abdul Hamid Mohamed Dayhab, a powerful businessman from the western city of Misrata, as interim prime minister. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Janet Perez Moya. Thank you for watching.